Okay, the teacher is in her chair. Please don't go live as yet. Chandraji. Hi. Hello, hello. I need you here. Hello. Hello. Okay, are we ready? Will you let me know? So when I give you a talking point, we take about 7 minutes to really bring in the essence of it. So it'll go like 777. And then depending on what you have shared, but it's also possible that when you're sharing, there may be a question that pops up. So I go more with an intuitive flow. So I may not have all the questions in my mind and on my tongue. And then we bring in a common theme or something that comes in. That will continue for about 10 minutes, and then questions from the audience if there is any, and then we wrap up. I don't have a message coming per se, but I need...
Even if the network is there, if you keep next to the transmitter, it makes...
Okay, so is that okay over here? No, for me to keep a time check.
You can keep it here or on...
Switch off the...
Yeah, switch off the Wi-Fi.
You're going live stream?
We have to, after this, we have to run.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon and welcome to day 7 of Auroville Festival. And as we said, we're exploring the first quality, the theme of sincerity. The first 4 days, we explored the 4 aspects of the mother. And this last 4 days, we will be exploring the aspirational aspect of each of this. And today, we will explore Mahalakshmi. In this session, with the guidance of Mahalakshmi, we will be exploring the domains of wealth and prosperity, and especially in the Aurovillian context. What does prosperity and wealth really mean? Abundance is an open-handed gift, refinement of harmonious exchanges, and generous practices as a necessity to invoke her. Let us step away from a mindset of scarcity and probe into mobilization resources as a step towards self-sustainability in Auroville. Let us seek to create an atmosphere in which she may feel welcome and actively infuse a glad flow into each and every aspect of our collectivity. So that's the context, and in that context is to really explore how individually and collectively can we invoke and evoke this for our own sustainability and for the purpose that Mother had dreamt for Auroville. So in that context, Anandi, I would like to start off with to just make this is, when we talk about economy beyond money, what is it that we really are talking about? I know we started it off, there was also a practice in the initial years, but somewhere we became an economy-based, let's say, community. And there is the thought, there is the spirit, there is that aliveness to still move to a prosperity model. So when we speak about an economy beyond money, what does this really mean? What does it entail for us as a community? What can we inspire and aspire for such that the communities outside or the world outside can take inspiration from us?
Well, first of all, we have to understand money and wealth from the point of view of Sri Aurobindo and the mothers. When they say that it is a sign of a universal force and that it is in its origin a divine power. But a divine power, like many other powers, has been delegated in this world and has been taken by the influence of the hostile forces, by Asuric forces. That's why we see in the world today how money has become the center of the society, which has created inequality, injustice, Money has become the only engine that motivates people to work, that motivates societies to progress, instead of being just an instrument. It started as an instrument of exchange, not an objective in itself. Looking at all these damages that this sense of possessing the money and utilizing selfishness for a selfish purpose, looking at this in the world, the mother gave a few very profound and very simple indications to build up a system which will not fall in the same problems of the world outside, to build up a model that could be replicated outside, that could prove to the world that another way is possible. She gave a few principles, and they will change completely our life. Some of them are already integrated in our life. For example, there's lack of private property in Auroville. The fact that all the land, all the assets, buildings belong to Auroville as a whole, but are not belonging to the individuals, that one cannot sell or buy buildings or land or goods in Auroville. And the fact that one is supposed to work for the collective, not to generate money for oneself, and that the work is made to develop one's capacity to serve the divine first and to serve the collective. These two principles are the basis of our life. And in order for the individuals to maintain themselves, to be able to work, there has to be a system that offers to them all that is needed for life. That is needed. There is a very important question about what is need and what is want. In the world outside, because of this rapid industrialization and commercialization and consumerism, the wants and the desires have become now like a need that needs to be satisfied constantly. While in Auroville, the idea is we will know what are our real needs, and that will be provided equally for everybody according to the needs, according to the real necessity. And it will be done in a system that doesn't exchange them for money in order to generate a profit like it happens outside. So over the years, Auroville has created various experiments. And it's interesting because we were meant to make experiments. Nobody arrives here and says, now I know what is the key of how we have to do everything. It is not like that. One thing is the guidelines. One thing is how we approach them, how we manifest them in our daily life. In that sense, we are now having an hybrid system where we still have some individual accounts, some individual entrepreneurship. We have some individual necessities, but there is also a strong collective body in Auroville that maintains all the services that are provided for free. They are not free, but it's without having to exchange money. We have right now basic services like education or health that are provided to everybody. And then we have a system where everybody can choose where to eat, what to eat, and still that falls under the maintenance system. So at least all the basic needs are being covered, partially on individual account, partially collective. And we are always trying to improve. The next step is going to a more complete prosperity, which covers everything. And that's what we are working right now. After many years of talking and experimenting, we are now being more focused on completing prosperity.
Sure. So there were two things that you mentioned. One is there is an element of thriving, and the element of thriving also presumes an element of trust. So one is today, given the population numbers we are, but tomorrow what the envisaged number is, how does this model actually also grow in that to be able to take care of that? The second is in terms of the distinction between the needs and the wants. And one of the things that is possibly also seen is to see is that we don't play ourselves into the hands of the economy or the money, right? But one of the things that we are seeing slowly is that this trust in abundance or the fact of being taken care may not be influenced by what's happening outside. We are seeing practices come in where more than the needs is also the fear of scarcity or the fear of something much more. Would I be able to take care or not? And then those different conversations come in. So coming to you, Devin, is how do you see this sense of where inherently one is expected to feel abundant and stay that and welcome it. But there is also that sense of scarcity that comes in to wanting to take care of the family perhaps in the best means as possible, or maybe there is a certain expectation, our own tendencies perhaps, one where we have come from, what are we used to or what we want to give. And while there is the system of maintenance to take care of the basic needs, but there is also the practice to say, can I get something more, right? And for whatever it may be, right or wrong is not the debate. So how do we decouple the work from the money aspect so that the fact that I'm being a willing servitor of divine consciousness, the joy that comes from it, the willingness to come together to build it, how does one strike a balance? How does one engage? How does one work or encounter through this scarcity that seems to be coming in, and that whether I don't know, but does it bring about a certain amount of practices which undermine the potential of can we work collectively towards a prosperity-based model? Sorry, I think I asked too many things, but
That's absolutely fine. So I think continuing from where Anandi was sharing, we really have to look at money from the lens of Sri Aurobindo Mother, because in the mainstream way, money, the design of money is built with scarcity. If there's no scarcity, there's no need of money. If everybody had abundant money, then we don't need money. So there is something in the design system of money that brings scarcity, and hence perhaps in the dream Mother said, where money would no more be a sovereign lord. On the other extreme, there are some spiritual traditions which kind of have a tamasic detachment towards money. So that's not the case. We have to engage with money consciously, but it should not become the sovereign lord, because scarcity is built into the design system of money. And the other aspect to reflect on is the difference between money and wealth. Often when we say this person is a wealthy person, we imply that this person has a lot of money. But wealth is, financial wealth is just one form of wealth. There are so many other forms of wealth, natural wealth, social wealth, cultural wealth, which if you see, Auroville is quite wealthy in. Yeah? So to acknowledge that we are very wealthy, even though financial wealth may be limited and it may be needed more and more, but to acknowledge that there is so much of wealth. And one of my friends once said that gratitude and scarcity, they cannot coexist. So I think if we live in that space of gratitude, that we are so fortunate to be in this experiment that the Mother has created, there is so much, then that scarcity won't come. And what you mentioned about being willing servitor, so the moment we get into the yoga sadhana, of course, each person at its own, stage, but it's very clear that our material needs keep going down. So the more one deepens into sadhana, the material needs keep going down, and one is able to live in the sense of abundance, without having too much of, material needs and desires, The other aspect from the to be a true Aurovillian, the Mother says, the more you are kind of consciously in touch with your inmost self, the more the means will be given to you. So I think it's a twofold thing for us. One is to deepen in our sadhana, to be more and more in touch with our inmost being. But we are not told to do that sitting in a cave. We are told to do that while building a city, while engaging with money, while doing everything. So it's a twofold thing that we balance. But to me, the key is the inner work, and the more as individuals, as collective, we do it in the spirit of collective yoga, the abundance is there. There is grace, there is abundance, it's out there. Even once Mother had said that regarding financial wealth, she had said that when people feel it is their privilege to donate to Auroville, that's when there will be abundance. So which means that what kind of life we need to live that people feel it's their privilege to give money or all forms of wealth to Auroville. So I think that's our work to really deepen our sadhana, deepen our work in that way. And having worked in the financial service world, I have friends who are heads of banks, heads of these financial institutions, and they are realizing that how the old system is crumbling. It's more of a question of when and not whether it will. So I think world over, people are realizing that the current economic system, which are so focused on GDP growth and material growth, is crumbling. It's kind of harming the earth, and there are people looking to kind of look at alternatives. And Auroville is a shining example for 55 years with so many experiments. So I think there is wealth, even outside Auroville, just waiting to come here. There are people waiting to come here. And I think what we are going through right now as a collective is to create that base to be ready to receive that. So I think that is how I look at it. So there is abundance.
So thank you for the distinction of when we're saying money and wealth. And of course, there is abundance, and I think there's a lot of abundance that people, and that gratitude and scarcity don't go together. So the question also is, what's the reason that the tipping point presently in Auroville is going the other way around? Second is, when we keep welcoming people, people come into Auroville at different stages, whether at a personal growth, spiritual growth, with family, individually. And they do come with a lot of their own understanding or operations. How does then one bring this transformation so that collectively then together we are, it's not repeating the same process over and over again, but they join at that point, understand it, and then there is amalgamation. The third is when we are looking at entrepreneurship in Auroville and, the fact that we have 600 plus odd units out over there. How does that work with this kind of a mindset? And people see wanting to be an entrepreneur in Auroville because, one, it's creative, allows to experiment, allows to make mistakes, but it's also where we're seeing that people can thrive if they've got that. So how do we, so the three different questions that I've asked, and please feel the others also to add to this, because these are very, let's say, very alive questions today, right? Because on one hand, we want to encourage young entrepreneurs and maybe the entrepreneur, and to see how we can support them to bring this prosperity model. The second thing is we are opening our arms and saying, come and help us build. But they are at different stages of growth. They have a sense of what Auroville is all about. But to live in Auroville requires a different kind of attitude, mindset, the churning, the burning. And the third is within the community itself, 55 years of togetherness, where yes, we will also go through change. We are a community in experiment, we're a community working at a collective level, but also individually. And there is a tipping that's going the other way around, right? So what's your response or thoughts to these three different questions? And Anandi or Pashiji and even Chandreshi, I'm just asking this question because it came very alive over here.
Sure, maybe I'll just have some thoughts and then I'll hand over. And I'll also, I think, touch upon the question you had asked in your previous round about decoupling, work and maintenance, and a thing that we get. So I work a lot in the schools, and a part of me is so joyful and grateful to see there are so many of Aurovillians who are there in school teaching because they love to be with children, and they are teaching that they're not there because they want to earn a living. But I also see, I often meet, I have conversations with, let's say, teachers, because I'm in education, where they joined the school at a certain point of stage when it was their calling, but right now they want to do something else. But our current maintenance system, the way it is designed, it's difficult for them to switch out. So now to see what that does to an individual who at this point is not feeling most called to do that work, and then what that would do to the children. So I think we certainly need a more fluid systems where individuals are allowed to take up work, which at this point is my swadharma and is what to my service, and the maintenance need not be very strictly defined. I also see calculations of quarter maintenances and half maintenances and 3-4 maintenances depending on how many hours you give, which takes away the joy of serving. So I think there is something that we need to look at in this system where we don't get so transactional. And really, I think you brought the question of trust. That we need to have that trust that if someone has left everything and have come here to serve, they would serve if given a choice. So I think to me it's extremely, extremely important that we allow individuals to choose their area of work. Of course, sincerity is the theme, so it goes both ways. We are also seeing examples of some people, doing work outside of Auroville, which is not directly linked to Auroville, and that kind of reduces the trust. So I think we need to rebuild that, and perhaps I think Chandresh will share more about creating systems for prosperity. So I think if everybody's needs are taken care of, then they can fully give themselves to Auroville. And I think those systems, maybe it's high time to kind of relook at our current systems and to build that in a way where everybody feels taken care of, everybody feels they can serve to their fullest capacity. And I think I just end with one thing that I read that whatever my need, the mother or the divine provides. And if the mother or divine doesn't provide, then that's not a need. So I think to be able to live in that kind of consciousness, I think that is key in our sadhana.
Sure. Thank you. Anandri, would you like to reflect on any of the three questions?
Well, I think that we have to take into account that coming to Auroville means a big effort to progress, to be humble, to work on ourselves, first of all. And if we are there to feed our fear, to look for security, to look for assurance, it will never work for us. We come to make this jump into the unknown. And it has always been like that from the beginning. And unless one is ready to do it, it's better not to start. We don't want to convince anybody to join Auroville unless they are convinced and they are ready for that jump into the unknown. It looks easy, but it is very difficult. We face suddenly with what we thought was our necessities, and suddenly they might not be covered. We face with how we perceive the reality around. We start judging the others, judging the situation. One has to be very, very humble and be ready to surrender to that, even that we know it doesn't work well. We know there is a lot to improve, and still you give yourself every day for that. Without that, I think we will be very unhappy because we are always expecting to see the things perfect, but they are not. As human beings, we have so much to progress. So why are we expecting that the system is so perfect? I remember when I came to Auroville and people were telling me, oh, but still the things are like that, so many problems. And I said, yes, many problems. That's why we are here, to work on them, no? So don't expect the things to be given just because one comes here. Second is, I think we have an immense grace in Auroville. I think we all have perceived it. And that grace has sustained Auroville, has made Auroville grow. And I trust in that. I only trust in that. When people think that outside one has the security of the pension or the security of, I think that is so unreal. That can be dismantled in one day, no? We saw it in the pandemic. The whole world can be put upside down. What really matters is your inner peace and your relation to the world, that you really create that relation. Don't expect the world outside to change or the things, the conditions. So when you are able to have that trust in the divine, that trust that you have given your life for it, I think around it, everything gets also, everything works. I have experienced that all my 30 years in Auroville. So trust and willingness to progress. I don't know.
Thank you.
If you have something to say.
So from that sense, Chandra, is coming to you, like even Devin asked, when we talk about a system to support a prosperity-based model, what are some of the resources that are required? And, again, given that this will always be dynamism, I don't think we can ever say we have arrived. There will be challenges at every layer. So how do we mobilize the resources for that, whether it is from people, mindset, attitude, systems to take care of it, potential problems that may happen in the future, which we don't envisage now, but inherently there is probably a capacity in the system to address and take care of it. And yes, anything on the environment of an entrepreneurship and how do we balance that our entrepreneurs look at prosperity-based model and not economy-based. Sorry.
Yeah, difficult questions. Devin put it very correctly, saying that the money system that exists today is fundamentally built on the notion of scarcity. And based on the money supply that moves around, there's always a grab for what you can get for your needs or wants. Now, in Auroville context, even in outside world, what's the model for money is, of course, one is its scarcity, but other is it's a liquid aspiration. Okay, because it's a liquid aspiration, you can mold it to your need. Whoever wants can mold it. It goes from one person to another, and then they mold it to what they need. So in that way, it is very fluid, very flexible. Now, in Auroville, we have to bring that fluidity, flexibility in our system, but not necessarily based on money, but based on a collective system that allows different people's aspirational needs to be met at their different level of engagement that they are at. Because we are all so different and everybody has a different needs at a different stage of life, when they are young and when they're children, they like, different things that they're learning, music, art, or bicycles. And as a family, if you have to provide for all these per unit, becomes very expensive. But outside, that's the model. So everybody tries to, grab the same things, but in such a multiplied manner. So your resources are not optimally utilized. Now, even as a family, there are different needs at when they're young family, when they're elder, and as individually, when different people progress at a different time, their needs will adjust. So we as a society, how do we start structuring systems that takes care of people's fluid aspirations? Okay. Now that's the need that we have to fulfill. And one thing we have to realize in Auroville context, to make what we've been called for, as I was saying before our thing, that without prosperity, as the mother wanted, without a system that takes care of need of the individuals within a collective process or collective milieu, Auroville as she wants will not happen. We may keep struggling, it will not happen. This is just my very strong feeling that unless everybody feels that their needs are taken care of in their own way, that they will not be engaging with Auroville in the true spirit and sincerity that they would need to be doing. In that respect, today what has happened is we have left our system to eke out for themselves their sustenance. And that eking out is the modality, and that again is driven by the economy of the scarcity. So different people try and eke out or at least grab whatever. Grab is not the right word, but for them, they feel that is the need. And also then what happens as a human nature, oh, he has it, I need to have it. And again, it's one of those same thing that happens everywhere, right? So that also reflects here. Whereas here, it should, as you said, it should be a call for doing, excelling yourself in your skills, and the competition is on how do you do better by example or by engaging, rather than by, I have this, I should have that, or there's. So if, so even for teachers and others, when the calling can change, it can. And instead of having entrepreneur, see, entrepreneur is something that you're engaging with. You're engaging your creativity. You're engaging even your ability to generate wealth even in the outer sense. Because see, finally in Auroville, in order to create the system, and we'll come to resource mobilization, we have to interact with outside and inside. Okay, so we will use the money system, but that is only for interfacing with external, because we are dependent on external, and external world depends on our ways of working. So in that exchange, we will work with money, and some individuals will be good with money. And mother actually realized that she had many people around her who were actually chosen to bring money for Auroville's needs in the early days. If you look at it, the first 50, 60 acres, a percent of acres that we own on the land were purchased during that time in the first 5-6 years, right? So, and then the people that even launched prosperity. I personally, when I was a child, I used to go and fill up baskets for, for the prosperity system here. And I've lived in ashram, so I understand the prosperity system. But again, for Auroville, it's not the same thing. Ashram, mother has provided everything in ashram, even, children's need, families need, but then families are different there. Whereas in Auroville, we have to now expand out. And again, we don't have to restrict ourselves. First, in now coming back to resource mobilization and some methods or tools that we can look forward to, we have to first understand what the needs are. And initially, we may not be able to provide the most flexible and fluid system that we can. But keeping that in vision, at least try and cover 60-70% of communities' need, at a different level. At a society level, education is one of these needs where higher education is not provided. But today, with the online education, you can provide degreed education sitting right here. And then, you encourage those who made good grades, you support. Otherwise, say, hey, maybe do some vocational training. So those teachers can be engaged in different ways. If somebody has an entrepreneur thing and they want to start something new, why not? But it's in the context of community. So if we can find out what the community needs are at a different level, and I'm not a sociologist, I'm not an expert in social economics, or I have passion to do socio-economic development for Auroville, like the pioneers did for greening, but I'm not a person who can design the system. Then I'm sure slowly we can, as a different people interested, they can come together. Anand is working on it, Jocelyn was, Pashi, and there were many people who started looking at how we can develop, at least understand what is needed. That was one thing area I did worked on in FAMC before, and sometimes what happens, people get stuck at we will not be able to do. How we do it? Where is the money coming from? Then what happens is it's like a sandwich. You start top and bottom approach. First, we have to know what the needs are in general sense from different people. And finally, it's not rocket science, it can be. And then you start seeing if we have to do what it would take. But for all this, you need a proper monitored system as to how much it costs, what our true needs are, and how we are utilizing it. Because it's now, I'm not trying to saying we have to look at it and wherever the leakage and all that thing, that's not the point. But idea is if we can bring transparency, if we can bring accountability, if we can bring technology tools, then what happens? The drudgery of trying to first form the base. It's like when you want to have a beautiful green structure, I'm saying with the plants and all that. You have to have a base, you have a frame. So you create the framework with technology and tools on which different things will start growing, organically on its own. So that framework for prosperity we have to provide. And that requires a certain structures, how the distribution will happen of various things, how the variety of schools or drama places and other things will be done, and what it means to sustain their needs. If there are, actually some of these things, when you say we want to go from today 3,000 to 10,000 or 15,000, actually there are models that say, okay, how many doctors you need. Pashi is very much structured that also. How many doctors you'll need, how many food acreages you will have to grow. And, so those are business models which are available as and we can work with that, So those things available, it gives us how much equivalent money resources we may need. And again, we can look at some of the creative people who have come in different areas. We can create workshops, ateliers for artists, so that it's not each artist having to fend for themselves, but there's an atelier. Same thing, we can have a common architectural office table, suggesting from a long time. Avanir was doing that, it didn't happen. So all these are collective ways of working together that have fallen apart, because we had left it to individual to fend for themselves. And that is what happened. We moved away from it because we just did not have the means at that time. It's fine. But I think today we are at a point where these things can be gathered back in, and the movements have started. And I think, as I said, some of this thing is understanding what are the needs from different levels, understanding what our growth path is, how many people we need, and then from that, just mechanically coming down to how much food we need, how much health care we need, what are the different areas, how much cultural programming, how much education. But those are just the mundane basic stuff. But how do we also bring in the real Auroville that is? And that's where the freedom is. And freedom will only come when people are satisfied, that not satisfied, but convinced that their needs are being met. And only when you show the roadmap, when you show the dialogue, you show the working out, the equations and the stuff like that, then it's logic, because we are mental beings still. So the convincing only will happen when you start rolling out, methodically. Say, look, this is what it is. We're going to roll out here. This is what we're going to do, and then step by step show it, we make it happen. So those are kind of the movement I'm seeing. When we can have more dialogue on what resources we need, if at all. Sharing. They're both not, we can share.
Yeah, so with that, I think I'll invite Pashiji to share what is this model, what does this model look like? What are the principles, and how do we really bring this system alive that can take care? From the conversation, I'm being present to the complexities that is there, right? It's individual need, it's family needs, it's collective needs, it's the social needs, the dependency from internal, internal, and yet the fact that with time, the growth needs can also change. So how do we really arrange food needs and all of that? So how does that system design look like? If you could just share.
Before I go into the system, what I would like to give you a historical background.
Yeah.
There are two models that are available to us. One traditional model in India of a joint family, more or less based on that, what mother started as prosperity in the ashram. Over the years, certain rigidity came also in the prosperity system of the ashram, some negative. But when Auroville was conceived, society, who was at that time in charge of the project, were given the responsibility to introduce prosperity in Auroville. It had its own little problems, but the problem was standardization. Everybody receives the same thing. In fact, it was calculated. Sometimes I feel it's very funny. You need so many grams of hair oil per month, so you bring your own bottle of that size. Things like that. But the basic principle behind it was that once you have surrendered to be the children of the divine. It is the divine's responsibility to take care of all your needs. We used to go and receive the prosperity in front of a big picture of the mother's feet with gratitude. Whatever we had asked for was there. The basic question which for me we have failed to understand, interpret and apply. We have not really seriously paid attention to what it means by being a village servitor of the divine consciousness. All the problem is there. The only condition to live in Auroville is to be willing servitor of divine consciousness. No other conditions. Where does word servitor come from? To serve. You can serve as a servant, like the old system in spiritual life also, a guru and shishya. Guru tells you what to do and you have to do it. Other is to be a willing collaborator, consciously collaborating with the purpose of the project. For me, it is not that we have to design new ideas, new systems, or new interpretations. We have to collaborate with what the founder wants. Let's not forget the base of Auroville Foundation, in spite of everything else, is spiritual seeking, collaborating at a level of that awakened consciousness with the evolutionary process, collaborating. That is what Auroville is, a living laboratory. We have interpreted it to suit our convenience and our own level of understanding. But what is lacking is dedication and discipline. Intellectually, we all can define it. But can we practice it day to day with all sense of humility, sincerity, and discipline? Now I come back to a slightly negative, positive comparison. In ashram, mother nursed this system till she left her physical, 1973. That system still works because of the discipline. Why it doesn't work in the rules? Because we came with the notion that we have to find new ways. And especially because this project was opened to people as families, it had a lot of attraction in 60s, for instance, to the young people in Europe and America who are basically society rebels. Suddenly they heard of a new kind of a concept, a new kind of an idea. Whilst they were looking for the East for certain kind of a spiritual guidance according to their own wisdom, they were also seeking it through drugs and various other possibilities. The first batch who came to Auroville, hippies, flower children, Black Panthers, you name anything that was going on in Europe and America at that time. They had their own perception. Mother, being very pragmatic, put them to work physically, because the barren land had to be discovered, to be renovated for habitat to be developed. Very interesting. Many of them started understanding what was the real purpose. Many of them didn't. Many came, many went back. The word spread, and different people who had a different experience shared it. But unfortunately, we failed to understand that the basic discipline, the basic purpose is of a spiritual seeker. All the rest in material life is as usual as anywhere else, because we have all those needs. But our approach has to be from a totally different level. Some or the other, there was deprivation. Till 78, it worked in one form or the other, but another form also developed during that period, with my mother's approval, which came to be known as Portus. And as was our habit to name a work area with the widest possible imagination, and always in English and French. So she called it Portus for all. So that started an aspiration. So the choice at that time was to go to the prosperity of the ashram through the society, or to Portus. And following that came, for a period, what was known as basket. Now, I want to give you a personal example. In the situation at that time, I was asked by the representative of the society, will you accept prosperity? I said, yes, if you believe it is the mother's wish. No prosperity came. The Portuguese people asked me, would you accept the basket? Yes, if you feel the mother's wishes. No basket, no prosperity. I'm trying to give you a difference of interpretation. What do I do? Some of my friends who were at that time called neutrals used to cook food in advance, put in a tiffin carrier, leave it in front of my hut late at night, wash it as a food for you for 3 days. Somewhere we went wrong, not being really seriously understanding why. Because we planted trees, we became so fond of trees that it became only an ecological project. Some of us who felt that economy was very poor, they became only businessmen, entrepreneurs. From out of that developed, again, the same old habits that we had decided to leave and come back. Okay. Having said that, over the years again, the thought came, because some or the other, we were able to carry the idea of this prosperity through what we called Portus. But one of the aspects I also want to share, that spiritually we are not deeply engaged. Given names by the mother, we are made into our own convenient terms. Just to give you an example. Prosperity became maintenance. Pulsus became PT. Two branches. Pulsus Distribution Center, PTDC. PT, PS, Purchase Services. Lack of serious, deeper understanding of being collaborators. Knowing what these inspiring words mean, we brought them down to our vital mental level. As far as I am concerned, that is the basic cause, and if we do not correct it, do not discuss it, we can have all kind of organizational structures, but if we do not willingly serve, it will not happen.
So what is the way forward? I understand history is important and
The way forward is for us to seriously consider how are we dedicated to this spiritual process, what is our understanding. I want to give you one more example. When mother accepted me finally, I had heard that just what happens in ashram when she accepts, that you offer all the material things that you have. So I was in service at that time. I had no fixed assets. I had only my savings. So on a A4 page, I wrote down all that I had and presented to her. She took her magnifying glass and she was looking at it. You have 3 insurance policies. You want me to be a beneficiary? And she was smiling. I nodded my head. Who were the present beneficiaries? I said, my wife and my 3 children. Have you consulted them? Mother, I'm the head of the family. What happens when they grow up, they don't agree with you. She takes a paper and a pen, looks at the figure in money that I had. How much is the premium of the first policy before it matures? So much, mother. How many years for it to mature? Calculated, came to a figure. She says, I accept the rest. This I leave it to you in trust. Yes, mother. My child, do you understand what trust means? You will not spend even a single penny on anything else except to serve the policies. Okay. This was the sentiment behind it. Why I'm giving you this example, many others have done something similar. But the fact is, we have failed to understand why we have come here, because many of us are excited by its so much of a vastness that each one of us has a very special area that we want to work in. Today's conflict is only because of that. But prosperity, abundance, Mother never said it is not in all spheres of activity. Now I go back to the master plan, which I don't think many of the Aurovilians even ever read. Population of 50,000. How has it been made up? 17,000 children, 0 to 19 age group. 7,000 adults as their mentors in cultural activities, physical activities, educational activities. 24. 2,000 in agroforestry activities. 26. Balance 24. 8,400 to be in revenue generating activities